I'm going to speak in English. Thank you for having me today. Let's talk about the topic that we hear very often, which is that data is the new oil. It's difficult to go a day or a week without hearing somebody talk about that. And while I think that makes good sense at a macro level, it misses the point that data has unique characteristics that other assets do not. Um, Data is something, well, consider when you consume a drop of oil, it dissipates, it turns into heat and energy and pollution. When you consume a drop of oil, you can only consume it one way at a time. And when you consume a drop of oil, it does not create more oil. So data is very different at a more of a micro level than oil is. Data is what economists would call a non-rivalrous, non-depleting, and progenitive asset. That is, we can use data multiple ways simultaneously at the same time. It doesn't get used up when we use it. And typically, when we do consume data, we are generating more data from however and wherever we are using that data. So the types of businesses, as we'll see, that capitalize on these concepts, whether they do so explicitly or implicitly, are the ones that are benefiting and really leading the economy today. Now, the question has come up whether data is an asset, and that a lot of people talk about data as an asset. So, whatever definition you use of an asset, whether it is a definition from a dictionary or a definition from an accounting definition, data really does meet the criteria of an asset. It is something that is owned and or controlled. It is something that is exchangeable for cash, and it is something that generates economic benefits, or as accountants call probable future economic benefits. I don't think there's an argument that data really is an asset or should be an asset. The problem is that the accounting profession still does not allow data to be recognized on balance sheets. And I believe, and my hypothesis is that that creates a lot of problems in organizations when it comes to getting funding, to getting support for data management. And this is an ongoing problem that I've been trying to help solve for years now. But forget what the accountants say. What do the investors say? Investors are clearly impressed by organizations that are more data driven. So we did some research a few years ago and found that companies that have a data officer, someone who is an executive who's responsible for and accountable for the organization's data assets, um, organizations that have an enterprise data governance function, and enterprises that have a data science function. Those kinds of companies we identified as being more data driven than others, and found that they have a market to book value ratio that's nearly 2 times higher than the market average. So investors very much favor these kinds of data driven companies, perhaps because of the way they perform, perhaps for other kind of intrinsic reasons. And then we also looked at companies that are data product companies, those who make the majority of their businesses from selling or licensing data or derivative data products. And we found that those kinds of companies have a market to book value ratio that's nearly 3 times higher than the market average. So this has kind of led me to this concept of what I've coined Infonomics. And the important part at the bottom there is about measuring data. And we found that the companies really don't measure their data very much. They don't measure the quality characteristics of the data. They don't measure its cost basis. They don't measure its contribution to revenue. And so because they don't do that, they're in a poor position to manage their data as well as they can. Excuse me. There's the old saying that you can't manage what you don't measure, and I think this is very true in the data world as well. But I also think that it follows that any asset that you're not managing well is one that you're not going to be able to monetize well, to generate value from. So for many organizations, this is kind of a vicious cycle of not measuring, not managing, and not monetizing their data as well as they could. So the idea behind Infonomics is to improve the way that organizations are to kind of reverse this cycle and get organizations to truly treat data as an actual asset. So let's start with managing data, since we're at a data management summit. And where can we find inspiration for managing data as an asset? Well, we are already managing assets using various approaches. We're using physical asset management methods and standards. We're using supply chain management standards, IT asset management standards. There are a whole bunch of other kinds of standards. And I would recommend that if you are a physical asset kind of firm, like a retailer or a manufacturer, maybe try to apply the concepts of physical asset management to the way that you're managing your data. If you are a financial services firm, perhaps try to apply financial asset management concepts and language to the way that you're managing your data. And if you're a services business, perhaps apply knowledge management or human capital management kinds of concepts to the way that you're managing your data. And I know that the DMBOK 3 is coming out, and that's certainly very helpful. But for a business, and I'm very excited about that, but as a business, our job as data professionals is to connect better with the business people. And if we start speaking the language that they use in managing their assets, perhaps we can form a better kind of collaboration with them. And language is very important. And so I think it's important for us to be able to speak the language of business, even in our data management activities. Another way to think about data is as an additional factor of production, or at least a substitute for other factors of production. There are the traditional factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. And today, what we see is many companies becoming much more efficient, much more agile by substituting information for land, for labor, for capital. An example would be just-in-time inventory management, which requires data to reduce the amount of land we need, perhaps the amount of labor we need. We see companies that are exchanging data for goods and services instead of for capital. We even see companies that are lending based on value of their data. And then today, especially in the world of AI, we are seeing organizations replacing creativity and entrepreneurship with data and AI tools as well. So I would encourage you to think about any way that your organization is very heavy when it comes to using land, labor, capital, or entrepreneurship, and where you can substitute data as a factor for that to become much more efficient and much more agile. There we go. Let's blow this out. So when it comes to monetizing data, let's talk about that. And the term data monetization is a broad term, and I refer to it as being any way that we are generating economic benefits from available data assets, not just selling data. And I have collected stories of over 1,000 different ways, real world stories of organizations that are generating benefits from data or innovating with data. And when I analyze these stories, they tend to fall into about a dozen different patterns of monetization. And so I think it's important for you to understand what these patterns are and think about how to apply them to one or more of the data assets that you have. Now, these patterns fall into two broad categories: indirect data monetization, in which data is used to generate more internal value, such as improving the performance of processes or reducing risks. We can also use data to identify new products or markets, improve relationships with others. And then direct data monetization is more about sharing data externally and generating some value from that. We can barter or trade with data for non-cash commercial value, like a reduction in discounts or favorable commercial terms. We can also take existing products or services we have and make them better and more valuable and more consumable with data. We can also license our raw data through data brokers or data marketplaces or ourselves. and we can sell insights or analyses or reports. Now, one of the things that often comes up, especially in Europe today, is the restriction of the GDPR, restricting how we can monetize our customer data. But what I've identified is this concept of inverted data monetization, where I cannot sell to you my customer data, but I can sell your goods and services to my customers without ever exposing who they are. So this is what I refer to as inverted data monetization. So for example, I'm working with a hospital system who knows who its diabetes patients are, but it can't sell that data to anyone. But it can sell to those patients um, gym memberships, healthy meal plans, and at-home, glucose monitoring test kits. So that's a way that you can monetize your customer data. As I mentioned, we also see organizations using data to secure loans, um, and some companies moving their data and digital assets into a separate holding company. That we wrote an article about this through the Enterprise Data Management Council about creating a data co. And this might enable you to put the value of your data on a balance sheet through a subsidiary kind of company, but it's a little bit of accounting tricks to do that. Now, when we are introducing data products, we can again publish raw data all the way through and including custom and integrated data solutions. Now, as we create more complex targeted solutions, they become more valuable and we sell them at a premium price, but perhaps their general utility is reduced. So we have to kind of decide where on the spectrum we want to be with any given data product. The good news is, again, data is a non-rivalrous, non-depleting asset. So we can take any given data asset or combination of data assets and create multiple types of data products with it if we like. Now, how do we go about conceiving new ideas for data products? There are a number of exercises that I facilitate during workshops. We can look at, again, what are these unique qualities of data and how we can capitalize on them. We can look at what other organizations are doing and kind of adapt to those ideas to our business. We can look at our data assets and see which ones perhaps are underutilized. Maybe we'll even measure which ones are underutilized. Um, we can hypothesize about doing more with data than just backwards looking, hindsight oriented analytics. We can take existing existing reports and analyses that we have and think about how to productize them, how to make them more commercial. We can look at the wants and needs of our partners and suppliers and customers and others throughout our extended business ecosystem, our partners' partners, our suppliers' suppliers, our partners' suppliers, our suppliers' partners, and so forth, to see how they might leverage some of our data. We can also look at processes in the organization, as I mentioned, the land, labor, and capital, and how we can better optimize them through data. And then, as I showed you, the patterns of data monetization, we can go through each of those patterns and identify opportunities to create a data product based on each of those patterns. Then what we want to do is assess those ideas, and we can assess them based on their impact to the consumer and to our business and their complexity. And those that are high impact and low complexity are ones that we probably price highly and deploy now. Those that are lower impact and low complexity, maybe we want to combine or defer to later. Those ideas that are high impact and high complexity, we probably have to develop some capabilities like improving data quality or improving the integration of data. Now, there are a lot of stories, and I don't have time to tell a lot of stories, but there are great examples of companies that are using data in innovative ways. Walmart improved its search engine to include trend data from the internet, from social media, and reduced the abandonment of shopping carts online by 10 to 15%, which is like an extra $1 billion of sales. An insurance company called Infinity Insurance leveraged their adjuster reports. Somebody submits a claim for an insurance claim, the adjuster reports, they analyze the claim, and then they pay it out or they decline the claim. they realized that these adjuster reports had language in them that could be analyzed to identify fraud. They greatly improved the ability to track and identify fraud and recover fraudulently paid out claims. Lockheed Martin, the manufacturer, is using data they're analyzing project documentation to identify leading indicators of project issues. Rather than waiting for people to type up status reports, they're actually analyzing project documentation in real time to identify, and actually and communications as well, like emails, to identify issues. They claim they have 3 times greater foresight into project issues now than they used to, and are saving hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Dollar General, another retailer, is selling its data to its consumer packaged goods suppliers in return for cash considerations. They now have a self-funding data lake, which I think is a goal for any organization. Allstate, another insurance company, created a separate company to monetize their data because they didn't want to incur the reputational issues that come with selling even aggregate or anonymized customer data. And so plenty of other examples. In the book that Michelle showed you, the Data Juice book, there are 101 examples. I have over 1,000 examples in my library. The thing that I like to look at in organizations is how do we evolve from backward-looking, hindsight-oriented analytics to more actionable kinds of analytics. And so we can take a simple question like, what did we sell last quarter, and evolve that question on behalf of our business users to, why did we only sell so much last quarter? Or what are we going to sell next quarter? Or how can we sell 20% more next quarter? Or how can we automate or digitalize something related to sales? And so I think it's important for us as data professionals to help our business people conceive these new ways of thinking about asking more deeper, richer, valuable kinds of questions. Now let's talk about data valuation. I'll finish up with data valuation. Data valuation, we perform data valuation for a lot of different reasons. We might want to help get funding for our data management practice. We might want to encourage better data governance. We might want to improve data literacy and data fluency. We might want to help prepare or encourage new use cases for data. So there are a variety of reasons why we would want to value data. And so what I did is work with some clients, some evaluation experts, to develop a base set of models for how to quantify data's value. So over on the left side, there are the foundational measures, which include the intrinsic value of information that looks at the quality characteristics of data, the business value of information that looks at the relevance of data against one or more business processes. It's kind of a mapping of data to business processes. And then the performance value of information, I'll use my pointer here, down here is it says to kind of run an experiment and say, how does having or not having data affect the performance of some business process? Now, over on the right side, we have the financial measures, and all that I have done really is to borrow from the way that valuation experts value or accountants value any other kind of asset, using the cost approach, the market value approach, and the income approach. Now, the cost approach says, what would it cost us to collect this data, to manage it, to store it, or what would it cost our business if we lost that data? The market value says, what can we get from selling or trading or licensing this data? Now that model gets very interesting because, again, we can license data over the same data over and over and over again. So how do we decide how high to price it? We generally have to create an artificial premium price for a product, or else it approaches zero. So it's a bit of a complex model to try to optimize. And then the economic value of data down here says, again, let's run this experiment, but look at monetary value. How does having this data versus not having this data affect the income that or expense savings that this data drives? So in the Infonomics book, there are details about how to details on how to compute each of these models and how to adapt them to your own business. So with that, I just want to wrap up and say, my recommendations are to help your organizations go beyond just talking about data as an asset, to actually manage it with the same discipline as your other assets, apply the same concepts as to how you manage other assets to your data. Also think about monetizing your data or generating value from your data in various ways. Look at those different patterns of data monetization, go through those exercises to generate ideas and then assess them. And then third, a lot of this starts with measuring data, measure and report on its quality, its cost, its benefits. This will all help drive create more of a data-driven behavior. I encourage you to work with your financial executives to help implement these models and then communicate them. Many companies that I work with are creating internal balance sheets for their data, again, because the accounting profession does not allow you to include the value of that data on your balance sheet. So with that, I will thank you again for your time to be with you, at least virtually today. I hope there's some good ideas here that you can take away. Michelle, I don't know if we have time for any questions or if we need to move along.
Yes.
Let me know.
I don't know if there is any question to Doug.
I know that was a lot of material and in English.
This is why I didn't go into sports. Professor, what a pleasure. What an amazing presentation. Thank you so much. You mentioned data-driven companies have 3 times, was it market capitalization?
2 times the market to book value ratio. So their market value on the market for public companies versus the value of their assets on the balance sheet.
Can you speak on how they are organized internally?
Well, very often, like I said, they have a leader who is in charge of data, responsible for and accountable for the company's data assets. And very often, this is not a CIO, but I'm talking about a chief data or chief data and analytics officer, or at least somebody at a vice president level. They have an enterprise data governance function, usually comprising of a data management council, a set of data stewards who are dedicated to that activity, and they will have a team of data scientists, often a centralized team that consults to or works with various business functions. That's the kind of the organization structure I see. There are some unique roles that I also see in data savvy companies. One of the problems for many companies, because external data is very valuable today, not just your own internal data, but I see many companies that have an entire department dedicated to procuring office supplies, but they have not a single person dedicated to procuring and identifying external data supplies for the business. And those that do, I think, are in a very good position to leverage a broader array of data than just their own data. So those are some of the things that I see. I've written a bit on and you'll see in the Infonomics book some ideas for other kinds of roles within an organization. So that answers your question and more.
More questions?
Okay.
No? Okay, so there is a little present for you, but I will send you by postal. It's the first is the shirts of the event. I don't know if it might come. This is Make ATL Great Again. The second one will be the freaky baseball cap that there is, yes, I'm that a freak, And so excellent. The last, it's my book. Cool. The idea that you have my book in your library, maybe I can sleep tonight. So this is my book. I will send you 99 things to know in data management, but it's Spanish. But it's a good idea just for learning Spanish a little bit, maybe for the next session.
Sí. Puedo leer un poco.
Un poco. So, but the idea that you have my book in your library, for me, it's incredible, okay? So, thank you, Doug. I will send you all the products. We continue with the event. It's a very pleasure to have you with us today. Next time, maybe physically.
Próxima vez,
Physically.
persona.
Because you are losing the dynamic group that it's a more important part in the data management summit where the people start to discuss. Maybe you can, I don't know if you have seen something of the event yesterday, but so now we have a session of that, just for have an idea that we working in data management summit. Thank you, Doug.
Okay.
Have a nice
Okay.
day.
Muchas gracias.
Bye-bye.
Obrigado. Ciao, ciao.